The world has seen quite a few amazing stories, one of which you will learn today. This is the story of one man and a baboon who worked together on the railroad for almost 10 years. In our time, rail transportation is an important transport hub. Every day, thousands of trains around the world deliver tons of goods and thousands of people to their destinations. And the same was true in the 19th century. Railway trains at that time were the most important and reliable transport that could deliver you or your cargo to your destination, on time and on time. But for the normal operation of the railway, communication between various services is necessary. At that time, the trains were very big and noisy, and the radio did not yet exist. And yelling at the train driver what exactly he had to do sounds like a dubious idea. Especially for this, at the end of the 19th century, a signal system was developed for train drivers, which showed what to do when approaching the station. At first, such signals were ordinary lights and gestures, and the people who served them were called signalmen. But time has passed and technology has evolved. Signals were now used instead of flashlights and gestures, which were fed through various switches from the signal station. The signals were ordinary poles, on which, depending on the switch, pointers and signs were raised or lowered. They meant the command stop, forward, move with caution, and at which station they should arrive. In order for the trains to move in the right direction and according to the schedule, a person had to be in the signal box and switch the necessary levers in order to transmit the command to the approaching train. The huge boom in rail transport at the end of the 19th century forced companies to hire huge numbers of signalers, one of which was our main character. In the 1870s, a signalman named James White worked on the railroad between Cape Town and Port Elizabeth of South Africa. And because of his hobby of jumping from car to car of passing trains, he got the nickname Jumper. But one day, by a tragic coincidence, James fell off the roof of the car and fell under the train, losing both legs in the process. Not surprisingly, with no legs, James was severely restricted from doing his job well. But he did not give up and, having made prostheses, continued to do his job, although it was a heavy blow to James's life. One day, at a local market, James saw a trained baboon driving a buffalo cart. Although this sounds impressive today, it is not so surprising, because the possibilities of their brain are vast. Today we know that baboons are very similar to humans. They know how to communicate, adhere to certain rules, know some words and understand gestures perfectly. And not long ago, the University of Rochester proved that baboons are also excellent at counting. But back to our story. James, the jumper, first asked, and then persuaded the owner of the wagon to sell him a baboon. And after some time the owner of the monkey could not refuse the persistent buyer and agreed. Thus began the most unusual friendship in the history of railroads. Before selling the monkey, the previous owner warned our protagonist that the baboon only works under one condition. And that condition was brandy. It's amazing how much they look like us. The baboon was named Jack, and the first thing James taught him was to observe and follow certain commands. Jack turned out to be a smart baboon and quickly learned a new craft, because if you drink brandy while learning, then you learn faster. Before long, James was showing a certain number of fingers, and Jack was pulling the corresponding lever. After a while, Jack realized that the trains use a certain number of horns, thereby maintaining communication with him. Very soon, the baboon learned to work independently, understanding what signal it was necessary to give at one time or another, and even constantly rechecking his actions during work. He also realized that sometimes train drivers need coal. Therefore, when the train arrived at the station, Jack took the key to the coal storage and hurried to the train driver to hand over the key. Needless to say, with such a partner, James and Jack were everyone's darlings of the railroads. This went on until one day, with her own eyes, an old grumbling aristocrat saw Jack at work. Of course, the woman immediately complained to the management of the company. She was horrified to see that the monkey switches the switches and is responsible for the operation of one of the railway stations. The company knew about the tragedy of James and that he had found himself an assistant, but they had no idea about his natural origin. Having decided to look into the situation, the company assembled a commission and began an investigation, as a result of which they learned the whole truth about monkey labor. As a result of the investigation, the company's management wanted to fire both, but James begged officials to the last to give them the opportunity to show the baboon's abilities, as well as how smart he was in order to keep his job. Still, the general manager agreed to conduct an examination of Jack's abilities. What was the surprise of people when Jack brilliantly passed the signalman's exam, showing excellent work skills, constantly monitoring and testing himself. The baboon even ensured that different trains from opposite directions arrived at the same time. To say that the manager was impressed is to modestly remain silent. Jack was not only officially allowed to work, but was even given a salary of 20 cents a day and half a bottle of beer a week. As a result, Jack, along with James, worked at the station for another 9 long years. At the same time, he never made a single mistake, given that he was a monkey and was constantly drunk. This amazing story ended in 1890 when Jack died of tuberculosis. Today, his body is kept not far from where he worked, in the Albany Museum in Grahamstown. Here is such a story. Thank you so much for your channel support. If you want to see more awesome stories, then subscribe to the channel and like. And that's all for me. See you all soon.